We are now in the room.
I'm drinking.
We don't start that yet. That's when we start suffering, we drink.
Oh, sorry. It was water, by the way, I should specify.
You know, that kind of reminds me of the one time that I decided me and Demonox would play Cuphead together, and I basically decided every time I died, I would take a sip of cider.
So, how long did it take for you to fall off your chair?
Let's put it this way, I had a bottle, it was gone in like 20 minutes, I think.
Welcome back, everybody, to the MADPlay podcast. And tonight we have a very special gameplay feature for you. A lost and then rescued Flash game from 2009. This is Klonoa Mu Attack. It is not an official Klonoa game, obviously. This was made for the Japanese site for the Klonoa remake that was made for the Nintendo Wii. So that tells you everything really you need to know about how well it performed. There is no love whatsoever in this world for Klonoa.
You should have more games, honestly.
Well, no, not really. Not really. I just wish they would re-release or remaster the first two games in the series, which tell a whole, complete, allegorical story about overcoming childhood trauma and growing up to be a better, more wholesome person as a result. There is a lot I could be saying about those games.
But spoilers.
And there is a lot that I have said in the past, as far as spoilers would allow me to do so. I really just want people to play Klonoa 1 Door to Phantomile in any capacity, available or not available, for that matter, and then immediately fire up Klonoa 2 Lunatia's Veil, which is the best game of the two, if you ask me. And it saddens me, again, that there is no love whatsoever for Klonoa from its parent company of Namco Bandai.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have this little Flash game, this very insubstantial, very simple, archaic arcade game with simplistic controls and even more simplistic objectives. Enjoy!
Yeah. It's also titled Mu Attack.
The Mu would be the base enemies in the series. You know, those little fluffy, roundish gremlins that come to steal your gold!
Yeah,
or your gems.
Which is this red enemy with the not beady eyes, these blue voids for eyeballs.
They are adorable, and they are especially cute when you inflate and explode them.
Just so you all know, the top button here, which is highlighted, because you don't see my mouse pointer, most likely, is basically the high score. It is not start game, like I would think it would be.
I have not my eye on the gameplay footage as we speak, so I was hoping that you would have already begun the game.
No,
instead you're still enjoying the nothingness that is the menu screen.
Of course, we have to do our housekeeping on the title screen. It is customary for these things.
Okay, so the point is the top button brings you to the high score. The bottom the bottom on the down low, if you will, brings you to the actual game.
Yeah.
So if you please.
Yes, which we're going to do right now. By the way, it is very, very archaically simple.
I am pretty sure they must have lifted the original Klonoa sprite from the PlayStation 1 original Door to Phantomile game for this gallery of sorts. Yes, that's the word I
By the way,
would
this
use.
is pretty much what it is. It's just basically you protecting crystals from these enemies.
It gives you a very bare, essential idea of what to expect in the proper game. There's a lot of grabbing enemies and throwing said enemies at other enemies, sort of puzzle platforming mechanics. They are a lot more fun than this, I should point out.
No. I've lost a crystal.
Yes, I think you're doing much worse than my first attempt.
Well, I only lost one crystal so far. No. Oh, no. No. Give me that. Hey, come back here with my crystal. I need me crystals!
Okay, and that brings us to the end of our acknowledgement of the gameplay. Now, let's get on to the topics, because we have a packed agenda tonight. So why don't you go first, Devar?
Okay, so, a mini thing to talk about, really, first. Me and my fiance have been watching a fair few things here and there.
Everywhere?
Yeah, mostly Netflix original stuff.
I think I know where this is going.
Yes, and the first thing I'll mention is that Big Mouth is very awful looking.
Okay, I did not actually know where this was going, it turns out.
Yes, so I'm just gonna say that. It's very unappealing, it's not funny, and it is not very good in any way. Anyway, on to other things.
Bertie and
Tuca and Bertie.
Tuca and Bertie, Bertie and Tuca, Tuca and Bertie, Bertie and Tuca, Tuca, Bertie.
By the way, just so you know, Madhog, I've lost the game. I've got 20,000 points.
You are not very good at this, as it turns out.
You expect?
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, that's
so back to Tuca and Bertie, Tuca and Bertie, Bertie and Tuca, Tuca and Bertie, Bertie and Tuca.
Yeah, which is actually a much more entertaining show than.
It's very good.
It is really good, honestly. It's random, it's silly. And
I don't know if random is the word I would use, but
I mean, I would call it that, considering some of the situations that suddenly pop out of nowhere.
I think we should contextualize this, because have you seen the cousin series to Tuca and Bertie, specifically BoJack Horseman?
Yes.
Most people watched that before Tuca and Bertie.
I've seen it, yes. It is the one show that everybody talks about and has discussed at great lengths more than we have.
Yes, well, there isn't much that we could possibly add to the Horseman show. It is a very deeply emotionally felt show about the inexorable degrade of its characters.
Yeah.
It is extremely depressing, and it also features very poignant commentaries about the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
Society, politics, and all of that. It has a lot of anthropomorphic animals in it, mixed in with some humans. It has a very magical realism quality to it. Aside from the occasional flight of fancy, it is mostly grounded, and it's about as real as it gets emotionally. Tuca and Bertie, in that way, in that manner, it is similar to BoJack Horseman, but at the same time, it has a completely different energy and approach to its own themes. Whereas the Horseman show is more magical realism, Tuca and Bertie is straight up Looney Tunes, if you will.
Yeah.
It's very much a Toontown sort of affair. The flights of fancy aren't just metaphors or symbolic imagery, they literally come to life and they affect the world around them. There is that one episode in which Bertie's well, breast comes to life and runs away, if you recall, after an episode of harassment.
Yeah, that's like two different. That's like from 1 to 100 straight away.
Yes, that's pretty much Tuca and Bertie in a nutshell. It will have something incredibly silly visually happen, but the reason why it happens, the context for it, might be much more dour and somber, which creates an interesting contrast. There is a juxtaposition between the loony, cartoony inanity and the real issues that the show tackles, mostly emotional and psychological issues, because it's the bread and butter of Studio Tornante, which, again, it's the studio that made both this show and BoJack Horseman. But again, the way Tuca and Bertie does it is much more openly towards the toonier side of things.
Yeah. With two entertaining female main characters, I would say.
Tuca and Bertie, Bertie and Tuca.
Yeah.
Bertie and Tuca, Bertie.
Also, before I continue, I got 37,460 this time.
Okay, good for you.
Anyway.
So, what did you think about the show, with your own words?
Just short, very... just very entertaining, it has a bit of a funny bone to it. It has characters...
Until it isn't.
And it has characters that are very likeable, very full of personality.
Well-rounded, I would say.
Let's see. It's very sexually charged, though. That's another thing to keep in mind.
Borsman... did I say Borsman?
Yes, you said Bors.
Okay, BoJack Horseman, in short, Borsman, if you will, was pretty sexually charged as well. Very much open about that, but not even close in the way Tuca and Bertie dares to go. It is very liberating in that way. Tuca and Bertie isn't just the female BoJack Horseman, as I established already. It's very much its own creature, with its own way to deal with the various themes and character moments and emotional trauma that it eventually tackles.
Yeah, I just basically looked at it like as a entertaining show that just so happened to have female characters essentially as the main cast. Myself.
Birds.
Yeah, birds. Anthropomorphic birds.
Lots of birds.
Yes, all the birds.
There is a cock.
Uh-huh.
Who acts like a dick.
There was that one character that basically got introduced, but wasn't important to the show at all. And we would never see him again.
Oh, do you mean the chef?
No, it's a literal
because
joke.
We will see him again, unfortunately.
Yes, I know, but there was this joke where basically Tuca and Bertie basically were chasing after somebody, well, the turtle that had something. I will not spoil what it is, and basically at one point during the chase, you got introduced to this character that even the show itself basically went like, here's this character. This character is not important, and you will never see him again.
They do that.
So it's kind of amusing, somewhat, in that regard, the level of humour we have.
So it's been a couple of years since I watched Tuca and Bertie. Only just now they have started the second season on Adult Swim, not on Netflix. And the reason for that, I think we should definitely bring this up. It's the big, fat, drunk, pink elephant in the room, if you will, who had sex with Tuca for some reason.
Oh no.
So, Tornante Productions was essentially screwed over by Netflix back in the day. It is the reason why Tuca and Bertie was cancelled, and also the reason why BoJack Horseman was cut short. Because as good as that final season of Horseman was, there were still elements missing about it, and that is the reason why. They were supposed to have 2 more seasons, but instead they had to get to a conclusion in that one last season, which was divided into 2 halves. They did the best they could with what they were given, which was boot to the head. Anyway, so Tornante went to Adult Swim with their hot Tuca and Bertie property in hand. Thank goodness they managed to reserve the rights for it. And now Adult Swim is broadcasting the show. 1 episode a week instead of the entire season all at once. Because, Adult Swim is not Netflix.
Yeah, of course.
So, I hope you have been watching the 2nd season, Devar, because it's pretty good.
I haven't got to it yet, though.
Well, it's there.
Though I will say, as a one final thing about Tuca and Bertie is that basically any show that basically decides that it should tackle and teach essentially about empowerment for individuals to have in moments of being sexually harassed by someone you do not want to be harassed by, whether
or
in
simply
the work
trying to live in a society.
Yes. So any any show that decides to tackle that, whether you're a man or woman being sexually harassed, anyone should have that power to say no to it. And I think that's worth talking about in our society.
Otherwise, your breast will literally fall off and run away.
Oh, gosh.
That was real funny. Real funny, though.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I want to say about that. Just a very simple show, just to start things off.
I would say it's a deceptively simple show that hides a greater darkness. But then again, the same could be said about how BoJack Horseman began. It's all fun and games at first, but then by the end of season 1, hoo boy, here we go, the game is afoot. And Tuca and Bertie definitely had that moment towards the end of season 1, as you are well aware.
Anyway, let us just... How about you? Anything you would like to add to the proceedings?
Oh, you know what I am here to discuss, my friend.
Yeah, but I know, but we gotta keep the illusion of the show.
You've been dreading this, I'm sure.
I mean, whatever do you mean? What could I possibly be dreading?
All right, let's talk about some more Moby Dick media, baby.
Oh, okay, Moby Dick.
It's Moby Dick time. This is going to be a recurring segment in this show for the foreseeable future. I just arbitrarily decided that it's time to Moby that the... Oh, God.
I mean, we're not turning to a spin-off show, Tuca and Bertie,
Tuca and Bertie, Bertie and Tuca, and Moby Dick and Tuca and Bertie, Tuca and Bertie, Moby Dick. Make that song. Right then. So, for this week's show, I went back in time, traveled back to the year of 1956. I didn't stay long because it was a stinky year, let me tell you. And I watched the 1956 adaptation of Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Now, we had a proper lengthy discussion about Moby Dick, the novel, its themes, the symbolism, all of the jolly good stuff in the previous episode of this podcast, which was the final episode of the serious podcast. Check out the cards up there on the corner of the video. You cannot miss it. You should go back and watch that. I'm sorry, I have words and they try to escape my mouth, and sometimes they get entangled and they try to come out all at once, and it's a mess.
It's less that with me and more the fact that I typically fail at talking in real life as well, so, you know.
We are such a perfect couple, aren't we? Anyway. Moby Dick, 1956. Watching this film was an interesting experience, more than, well, a positive one, if I am being perfectly honest and blunt right off the bat. It was akin to rediscovering a less remembered part of Hollywood's history in the twilight years of the Golden Age, especially when you see the names that were involved with this project. It was directed by John Huston, which by that point he had already directed approximately 13 films. This was his 14th, if I remember correctly. His debut film was The Maltese Falcon from 1941, the one starring Humphrey Bogart.
It sounds familiar. I might have seen it, but as per usual, I might have forgot it completely.
It's one of the most celebrated films of its time, so it's definitely a solid way for any director to begin their career. John Huston had a lot of experience in screenwriting before that. He overall had an exemplary career, a very prolific one. He also directed The Treasure of Sierra Madre, also in 1967 that peculiar James Bond parody titled Casino Royale. Nothing to do with the Casino Royale you might be thinking about. It had the likes of Peter Sellers and, unfortunately, Woody Allen in it. Again, if I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I watched that one.
Right.
So he made a lot of films. His last one, before he died, was in 1987. An adaptation of The Dead, a short story from the James Joyce's The Dubliners collection. So anyway, back to Moby Dick. John Huston also co-wrote the screenplay for the film. Would you like to know who the other writer was?
Okay.
It's a good one. It's a real good one, by the way.
When you say it's a
doozy. No, it's a very interesting one. John Huston co-wrote this adaptation of Moby Dick along with famous American novelist Ray Bradbury, who wrote Fahrenheit 451, the one about book burning.
Ah.
That novel. Have you never read Fahrenheit 451?
Probably not, no.
Well, I have. So, this is big news for me. This is why it feels as if I am rediscovering a tassel of the Hollywood mosaic that film historians don't seem to recall all that often. This is not a very discussed film in general, and yet I do believe it is one of the most influential ones in terms of how book adaptations would be made. Because having seen it, I can definitely say that the 1998 TV adaptation of Moby Dick, which I discussed last time, takes a lot of notes from this classic film. The opening scene of Ishmael slowly walking down towards the sea town comes to mind. So since this is a film very much of its time, there are a few... there are some aspects of it that sadly you would expect it to have. Namely, the portrayal of Quickwog and other such minority characters in it that are, let's say, less than flattering.
That's per usual of that era.
Yeah, it has to be expected. Quickwad is not played by an actual Islander, of course, played by an Austrian actor, of all people. I actually have his name right here. Let me bring it up real quick. Friedrich von Ledeber played Quickweg in Moby Dick. The performance is offensive, yes, very much a product of its time, but it is somehow not as over the top as the 1998's TV adaptation. Which isn't saying much. At the very least, the 1998's adaptation put on a little bit more effort in the casting, because the actor was not white. That's a real low bar. So sadly, there is that. There is, of course, the expected faulty, fundamentally institutionally racist portrayal of minorities that are just there because they were in the book.
We have to be era appropriate, apparently.
We have to be era appropriate or something along those lines.
Yeah, of that kind of bullshit.
Of course, the actor who plays Ishmael happens to be too old for the role, as it was the style at the time. That's just good old-fashioned Hollywood.
Yep.
Although they seem to have gone a bit too far with this particular casting choice. The man who plays Ishmael is named Richard Basehart, and I swear, he looks much older than almost everyone else in the film. Gregory Peck as Captain Ahab, full makeup and everything, looks younger than Ishmael. That's nonsense. There are so many close-ups of the actor that showcase the veritable dune-laden desert that his face is. Everybody calls him Lad in the film, which makes it so much better. His dynamic with Quickwog, he acts like the typical condescending white man that explains things to the quote-unquote savage.
Yeah, the simpleton, as they would call him.
Yes, I just love the fact that Quickwag is a seasoned veteran, and Ishmael, whom is supposed to be a newbie, just decides he has to explain to him how ships are made.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yes, that tracks. That's definitely accurate to the times, I have to say. Some would say it's still accurate today. Anyway, so as you recall, I said that Gregory Peck played the father who delivered the sermon about Jonah in the 1998's Moby Dick. You will never guess who played that very same role in this film.
Who is it?
It's Orson Welles! They had Orson Welles. They had him covered in this old man makeup, which was pretty good. Do not watch this film in HD, because it's going to make the makeup look exceedingly fake. It's also going to add about 40 years to Ishmael's face. But yes, Orson Welles as Father Mappy delivers the Jonah sermon in this film. And I have to say, it is not quite as good or as memorable as when Gregory Peck would do it. many decades down the line. I just love the level of hum that Peck puts in his performance. And speaking of which, this is Captain Ahab, if you ask me.
So this is the ham.
This is the ham. This is the intensity. This is the scenery-chewing performance that Patrick Stewart couldn't quite deliver as the same role. But Gregory Peck, just by showing up, by standing firm and looking serious and intense at the rest of his crew, just by doing that, he is a better Ahab than Patrick Stewart's. And then he speaks, and he delivers his soliloquies and his dialogues with that delicious Shakespearean inflection. The entire production feels very Shakespearean in the way the actors perform. And they are all pretty good. Personally, one of my favorite characters in this film would be the second mate. Mostly because he looks like the real-life version of Popeye the Sailor. I fib you not. Gregory Peck just steals every scene he's in. And once again, the best part of this film, or indeed any adaptation of Moby Dick, is the dynamic between Captain Ahab and his first mate, Mr. Starbuck. And I told you last time I really liked the Mr. Starbuck from the 1998's adaptation, right?
Yeah, I remember this conversation we had.
The actor who plays Mr. Starbuck is Leo Genn, or maybe it's pronounced Jen. I'm not sure. Anyway, every scene between Gregory Peck and Leo Genn is a contest to see who can chew more scenery. If Gregory Peck's intense delivery, or Leo Genn slightly more understated, but also intensely worried, I should say, in his own way. And it definitely makes this film worth watching just because of that. Also, I believe that this version of Mr. Starbuck makes much more sense in the context of the overall theming. Because one of the weakest elements of the 1998's production was the climax. Where everybody dies, specifically, because it's a TV budget and they really could not do much of an impressive job. Mr. Starbuck did not follow the rest of the crew to hunt down the whale in the various boats that they used for whaling. He stayed back in the ship, utterly defeated, waiting to die, literally and figuratively. In this version, Mr. Starbuck does follow the captain into the front line of the whale hunt. And when he sees the captain, the dead, lifeless corpse of Ahab, tied up to the mass of the whale with the rope of his own harpoon, and still somehow beckoning the rest of the crew to come and kill the whale. The symbolism is self-explanatory, I would say. When that happens, Mr. Starbuck says, "F it, let's kill this whale, I've changed my mind."
Right.
He had resisted Ahab's influence for the entire voyage. He had been a God-fearing man trying to be the voice of reason in a world that was going mad. And at the end of it all, he sees the whale. He sees that it has his captain, and he decides, I must avenge the captain. And so he follows the crew to their death. And that is Mr. Starbuck in this version of Moby Dick. A much more interesting version of Starbuck, although are slightly less fragile and human than what we had in 1998. And speaking of which,
Yeah.
I told you that Patrick Stewart's best performance in that film was that soliloquy towards the end of it all, before the climax, where he starts to regret what he had become, when he mentions his family, his wife and neglected son that he had left at home, and all the time he had wasted in this fruitless pursuit before the whale appears, and then all of that goes out of the window. This scene is also present here. It's a very important scene, as it were. The framing of it is very different. There is never a mention about the captain's family. That's being completely left out of this film. And as such, that moment of self-reflection feels less like a epiphany that then gets drowned out by the ego, and more like an acknowledgement of the inevitability and inexorability of what Ahab is doing. He had resigned himself to be this way. There was no point of no return, no option for this man before even the film started, before even the story started. And this moment really drives the point home. I like both those scenes for what they commune and convey about the character, for completely different reasons. So that's great. And now for the painful part.
What's the painful part about all this then? Is it the animation?
No, actually. No. Actually, I have to say, the climax of this film is pure Hollywood spectacle in the best possible way that 1956 could afford. There is this spectral, terrifying animatronic of the white whale that looks very expensive too, and the expert smoke and mirrors of the cinematography manages to cover its fictitious nature and make it really come to life as this terrible, unstoppable monster that kills everything in its path. They did the most they could possibly do with this fake whale, and it looked real good. That climax alone is worth watching the rest of this film. Unfortunately, getting there has a few obstacles.
Is it a slog?
No. It's a briskly paced 2 hours film. I have no problem with that. The problem is that this is a story about whaling, which means they have to show the actual whaling.
Oh no.
And it's 1956. And I know for a fact that this film collaborated, amongst with other entities, with a whalesman association. So they used real-life stock footage of whales being hunted, harpooned, and killed. That's one thing you always forget about films made in a certain period of time in Hollywood. You do remember the racism, you do remember the, lack of sensibility in anything really. You tend to forget that for the longest time they pretty much abused animals if it meant that the scene was good.
Yeah.
So again, I am pretty sure that this whaling association that gets credited and thanked for in the opening credits of the film provided footage, I am spitballing here, for the actual whale hunting portion of the film, which was then spliced and cut in between the scenes with the actors. So that's the hardest hurdle to get past in order to watch this film.
Yeah.
So that's my experience with John Huston's Moby Dick. Solid adaptation, solid acting and cinematography. Terrible casting choice in Ishmael, I must say. At least they cast a young lad to play the role in 1998. The whale is good. The actual white whale, that is, not the rest of the whales and whaling. Gregory Peck as Ahab is fantastic. And I do also appreciate the teensy tiny detail that was left in the screenplay about the origins of the actual name Ahab, which I had forgotten. It's a Book of Kings reference.
Ah.
Nicely done there, Mr. Melville. Conclusively, it is worth watching for the climax, the cinematography, Gregory Peck, definitely. And also if you are a film historian or a Moby Dick completionist, as I am becoming, apparently, this is definitely a must-watch. This is probably the most important and famous adaptation of the classic Herman Melville's novel. One that pretty much set up the bar for everyone else. For better and for worse. Next topic.
Yes, allow me to waylay you with another sea-themed...
I have no words. This is the worst segue you could possibly use. I don't know how you managed to bungle this up so bad, but here we are.
Well, I thought, you could see through it.
Just talk about Aquaman, damn you.
Yes, Aquaman, the modern iteration of Aquaman, I should say. Because me and my sweetheart watched that recently, because she saw it first, and she said I would enjoy it. I did enjoy that movie.
Did you especially enjoy Aquaman himself in his bare-chested glory?
He was quite man-cakey, honestly.
That's where I wanted you to be. That's the state of mind I wanted from you. Please, relay, I say.
Yeah, I was going to basically say as well that basically, typically a lot of people, whenever they think of Aquaman, they think of the guy who talks to fish, and that's it.
This film is vindication, if nothing else.
For years, Aquaman has always been this strong,
white. I think we need to address that this is a billion-dollar success film with a non-white male lead. Is this film fun?
Yes, it is very fun. At times, I basically felt like I was watching Uncharted at one point, just because of all the jumping
Uncharted
from building to building.
Wishes it could be this.
Well, it just feels like what a film version of Uncharted wants to be, sort of deal. Just because of, you're in a city that's basically has some form of, puzzle or something to basically find where the real treasure is that you're looking for, and then suddenly...
You're describing Indiana Jones, you know that.
Yes, guess what? It all comes full circle, back to Tintin!
Right.
Anyway, so I'll just say overall, the film is fun. It has something worth saying about its themes that it decides to cover, where basically the theme is obviously is about the act of showing mercy and what actions and consequences means when it comes to the intention behind what you're doing.
That's great and all, but I would think that such elements as theming really don't matter in this film because it's a pure Hollywood spectacle in the best way possible. It's essentially 1999's The Mummy. This is the reason why I liked Aquaman. It's the kind of globe-trotting action-adventure with a charismatic lead, filled with memorable set pieces and good special effects, a pure popcorn-munching spectacle, a fun time to be had in theaters or otherwise, much like Stephen Sommers' The Mummy was in 1999, with a solid cast to back it up, twists and turns, and simply put, a pure summer blockbuster. With no pretenses, aside from the inevitable cursed association with Justice League. Ugh.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And that's really all that it needed to be, and it succeeded with flying colors at being exactly that. There are war sharks in it, for crying out loud. There is Cthulhu in the climax.
I know, right? The bloody Cthulhian-based entity in the sea.
It's so much fun, and sometimes that's all you need from your cinematic experience. Fun. And most of the times, people forget what fun looks like. Because the DC cinematic universe has been the antithesis. Has been consistently the antithesis of fun under Zack Snyder. It has been pretentious garbage that didn't really go anywhere fast. So it's nice to have some hidden gems.
Yeah.
In between the shambling remains of this universe, or whatever you want to call it. On that note, I also recommend Shazam and Birds of Prey. They're all good films in their own unique ways. So Aquaman, thumbs up?
Yeah, definitely a thumbs up. Like I said before, it has a story worth telling. It's basically very interesting, likable characters,
yes,
and action set pieces that just feel like everyone's having fun with the entire thing. Yes, and Cthulhu makes a special guest appearance. So yeah, I definitely would highly recommend this. I mean, especially with them locks. Mm.
Ah yes, them locks. I love Black Manta's costume. They did not hesitate at all with that design, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, my sweetheart did not like it all that much. She said it looked very stupid in her mind.
But that is the Black Manta aesthetic.
It is, isn't it?
Yes, and this is a silly, goofy action film. Let it be stupid and fun. That's the whole point. Imagine if Black Manta's costume would have been some, I don't know, hyper-realistic catfish. It would not have looked really at home with this film.
No.
Or maybe it would have looked more at home, come to think of it. So yes, I'm glad you enjoy films. That's my takeaway.
Yes, well, I'm not a film buff, but I do, enjoy a film every so often, especially if it's good.
So, if you happen to watch Godzilla vs. Kong, we can talk about that.
Oh, that would be easy to review right now. I haven't even seen the movie, and I'm assuming it's just going to be big monkey and big lizard fight. The end.
I mean, well, yes, but also more. And I will not actually spoil it to you, because let me tell you right now, I marked out quite loudly before we look at the exit stage left of this podcast. I am going to just briefly mention what game I have been playing over the past couple of days.
Is it Disgaea 6?
Disgaea 6.
Yeah, I thought
Defiance of Destiny. I am such a whore for the Disgaea series. My soul belongs to this franchise. It's a curse. I must bear it. There is no escape. But yes, Disgaea 6 Defiance of Destiny.
So, does it have its claws into you?
Yes, it does. Personally, I think Zed is my new favorite protagonist in the series, and as you know, I do not say that lightly.
Nope.
I think the writing is a little bit better in unsuspecting places, and I also do not say that lightly about Nippon Ichi in general. And there was a major shift in aesthetics and game engine as they decided to switch to Unity, so all the characters are 3D models now. A choice that I am sure will turn off many long-time fans. But personally, I don't dislike it. For those who are completely lost by now, the Disgaea series is this long-standing, almost 20 years old by this point, tactical RPG series. Think of Final Fantasy Tactics, button cracks, steroids, every known drug, turning Super Saiyan, exploding into the universe, causing a second Big Bang. It's one of the most unhinged, inane, insane, over-the-top, numerically, statistically crazy games you could possibly ever or will ever play in your life. And I've already brought this up the last time we discussed a Nippon Ichi property in any meaningful way. Remember that Witch and 100 Night thing?
Yes, I remember the rats.
You remember the rats, I remember the game show. Spoilers, I like this game. But I am a long-time fan, so this was an easy purchase for me. It's very hard for anyone who's not been a long-time fan to really ever get into it. It's seemingly impenetrable and not the most intuitive unless you have experience with it. Although that said, every new game in the series is a little bit more easy, or rather a bit more polished in terms of quality of life improvements, but it's still pretty overwhelming, the sheer amount of things, auxiliary gameplay elements and mechanics that inundate the overall experience. So everyone needs to keep that in mind. Basically, what I'm saying is that this is not the game, or indeed the game series, I would choose to be my first ever tactical game. This is the final boss of tactics games.
Strategy RPGs, yeah.
Keep that in mind. Turn-based tactical RPGs. This is the final boss of it all. And I started with it, so that tells you everything. Anyway, Disgaea 6, Defiance of Destiny. It is out now. Please buy it. I don't want this to be the end of it.
I doubt it will, honestly.
Honestly, this game, I think it's been the longest one in development. Back in the day, there used to be a Disgaea game every 2 or 3 years. the break between 5 and 6 was of about 6 years. The longest one yet.
Wow.
I have a feeling that this is a do-or-die situation for the franchise. I have ranted long enough about it, considering I have said nothing about it at all.
Yes.
Substantially. Thanks for joining us, everybody. This is where we shall end the podcast. This has been Madhog Thy Master and Devar Arkvaron. I just realized we have lost the habit of introducing ourselves at the beginning of the podcast.
Yay!
Which is a tad embarrassing, but here we are, nonetheless.
Yeah, take care of wherever you are.
Tuca and Bertie, Bertie and Tuca, Moby Dick, book Tuca and Bertie, Tuca and Bertie, Moby Dick.
Aquaman!
Aquaman, Tuca and Bertie, Aquaman, Moby Dick, Tuca and Bertie, Aquaman.